It's nearly 2 years now since I unpacked a bike in Texas, having travelled from the Trossachs in Scotland across to the USA. I had hoped and planned to ride the 800 miles of the Arizona Trail. Let's see how that worked out for me. So I packed what I thought I needed, took a train to Manchester, flew across the Atlantic, and my first stop was the famous Pikes or Death, the Texas Slowdown, or Lowdown as it turned out. Acclimatization in the cold. I was expecting Texas to be warm and sunny, but the weather wasn't, but the company was, and it was great to meet your heroes and see some new places. To camp down by the Bidou, to do the tourist things, and then to take the train for 24 hours across from Houston to Tucson. After arriving in Tucson, I spent the night in a cheap motel and then headed out back towards the Mexico border, which is really the start of the AZT. It was my first real entry into the desert, and I had a bit of a shock. I planned on riding 50 or 60 miles and camping, but had a complete water freak out and decided I was going to carry on to Patagonia, which turned out to be 70 miles. It was a bit of a long day for the first day, a real trial by experience in terms of what the tracks provided, but an absolutely stunning ride. And I rolled into Patagonia just as the real darkness set in. Patagonia is a beautiful place to spend a few days, surrounded by fantastic gravel tracks. The camp at Terrasol, run by Mary, is highly recommended, and it's a stepping stone to the AZT, to the connector section, and some of the first bits of single track, which were just stunning. After a few days in Patagonia, I headed south again towards the border, out across the Canelo hills to Parker Canyon, with the plan then to go to Sierra Vista and then the border. It was the first place I saw other bikepackers. These were three just outside the town, and these were the red dirt roads that led across the plains between the Sky Islands. Canelo Pass and the AZT connector trail was certainly more eye-opening, riding fully equipped for the first time, fully laden bike, and it was with some relief I got to Parker Canyon on the first day. From Parker Canyon, I thought I was going to have an easy day, a road ride. After a hilly start, heading back down to the plains and Sierra Vistas behind that massif in the background there. All I had to do was follow my road route via Google Maps to via the Fort Huachuca. Unfortunately, when I got to the main gate, I didn't have a Department of Defense pass, so they wouldn't let me in, and that negated a 45-mile detour, which really wasn't in my plan for a bit of a kind of rest day. But once I was at Sierra Vista, it gave me a chance to rethink some of my packing, to lighten my bag, to ditch some things like the solar charger and my more heavy gear, winter gear for the northern passages of the AZT, which had been closed remained closed due to the exceptional snowfall that winter. And so here I am heading down the last section after the Montezuma Pass towards the border. Just a stunning area, really not inhabited or farmed, just a few wild cattle. The border was closed until midnight due to a container movement order to do with the border patrol, so I stopped just outside for that evening. Good afternoon from almost border point 103. Restrictions are still in place till midnight, so I've stopped just short of the border. Although I don't think there's any container movement. I don't really want to run into border patrol if they are quite horrific. So I've just popped up here. Seems very nice. I think this will be me next. 14 hours. And down to the border at 7 AM. The start of the AZT 300 node boat northbound. After a fitful night's sleep, I headed down to the border for a 7:30 start, and then back towards the Canelo hills, hoping to make it beyond Patagonia. It's a beautiful morning, amazing border post, not what you imagine. And then heading out on the first wide dirt roads, past these amazing wild horses, towards Parker Canyon, trailhead, and then to find some water, as it had been a day since my last resupply camping out. I pretty much overcooked it on the first day. I made it through the curfew section before sunset, but then really had missed a water stop, so I had to backtrack to Patagonia, which wasn't the plan, but it was best in hindsight. And the next day I think I was still dehydrated, not feeling great, and the trails are still hard going through this section, but made it past Kentucky Camp, where there's a nice spigot for water supply, a bit of hiker bike, and then into these beautiful hills with these amazing trails. this was a lovely camp spot, and each night just laying out and waiting for the sun to set. Day 3 towards Colossal Cave, just again great single track, mostly downhill through cactus and with wild cattle there. Stopped off for a resupply up at the cave, and then camped just past the Rincon. Start to see some spiky things. And travelling solo, trying to capture a bit of footage as well. I never did manage to film long enough to roll over a rollover gate, but I made a good effort. Stopped fairly early. This was a lovely spot, not far from the river here, although a mouse did steal all my trail snacks in the night. This was one of my favourite sections, riding through this little canyon just outside Tucson after a resupply. I'd missed the Rocking K, but made the Circle K. And then the day was to be heading up the Reddington Road across the 4x4 tracks, and then the single track over with the hiker bike through to Molino Basin. And this is the new Reddington Road short bypass section that just got published that year. Better than it looked. After the 4x4 tracks, more single track, looking back to Mica Mountain, and heading for the hiker bike up to Molino Basin or up and over. That was a ridiculous hiker bike. Wow. Into the valley. Hopefully we can ride down the other side. As it turned out, I didn't ride much down the other side, but had a night at Molino, and then heading up the Catalina highway, the road section for the AZT 300, rather than the lemon push, heading up from something like 4,000 to 7,000 feet. For the little township of Summerhaven, and then the Oracle Ridge and down to planned camp. What I didn't know was that the road, the high point, was before Summerhaven, so I got a rather unexpected and enjoyable downhill past the snowfields, and then onto the Sunset Trail, which was a navigation kind of challenge. Kept looking at my line on my GPS thinking, is this really a route? Across little icy patches and stumbling across trees and crossing rivers. and even managed to get a snow patch to cross at the end. And then after pizza and cookie in Summerhaven, onto the Oracle Ridge, which is isn't as bad as they say, but still was kind of challenging through some areas of burnt trees, navigation, finding the path, and of course a bit of hike-a-bike. Before this stunning double track descent, which was kind of rough and fun at the top, and then got into kind of over my pay grade, kind of baby head steep drop-offs on a still double track. So I don't know how any Jeep gets up there, but just getting down it on a bike was a bit of a hanging on challenge. But I decided it was easier to hang on to the bike and walk, and made it down unscathed and down to American Tank for an overnight camp. Going into Oracle for breakfast, a very nice breakfast. Headed out again on these just well maintained, winding, sandy trails in and out of washers, across towards the Freeman Road and then to Antelope. How you doing? So a great selection of spiky things in this area. Cat claw was had been absent for a couple of days, but was back. And the cholla forests, the jumping cactus, was there to get you. A mini cholla was in my leg in the last image, but I really got a spike on these kind of panhandle cacti that went straight through my shoe. And felt like it jammed against the bone in my toe. Managed to get it out, but wow, was that sore. Clear place to stay on the trail and not go wide on any corners. Antelope Tank was one the place. I filtered water before the evening. Before the next day, across the Ripsey trails with the copper mines in the distance, the settling ponds. From Antelope through to the famous spigot near Kearny, and then down the Gila to a camp by the riverside. Freeman Road Collector had just been installed and hadn't been filled yet. This blue barrel was one of the other collectors, and collecting water. This was another. A tank, a filter, a bottle, a friggin' ladder. Cool. wildflowers were out in force through Ripsey and along the Gila. Just this super bloom of colours from the wet winter that really appreciated. And from the Gila, a morning's climb up through this landscape of rocks and views to the stunning Martinez Canyon, heading for the water collector, and just photographs everywhere. And amazingly, John Schilling at the finish line to say hello. Definitive race director meets as many people as he can. So having learnt before I set off from Mexico that the northern half of the Arizona Trail was out of bounds, weather-bound, I had to make another plan once I got to Superior. And the Queen's Ransom seemed like the obvious choice, another one of John's routes that would loop me back to Kearny and allow me to then head south again, back down the AZT. But not before a couple of days off. Superior is a nice town to be based in for a couple of days, and the lost trails that head out of the town on the old $1 Million Highway make for a lovely morning out. And I got to meet some other AZT legends on the way. The Arnott Canyon, which links Superior with Picketpost, was a wonderful spot. And then once I'd actually headed out along the magma, the AZT turns off to become the Queen's Ransom route, and I camped overlooking Phoenix. Before heading into Phoenix for a couple of days, riding along the canals, along the urban sprawl. It was all new to me, so it was all really interesting riding. On the way, you pass through a couple of trail centres. And at Horse House, I popped into a bike shop to have my derailleur checked, where they condemned my chainring, and found a replacement, which is ideal because then we headed out to Sedona with John for some riding on some kind of natural feature trails among the big red rocks. And then continuing on the Queen's Ransom towards Florence, saw my first snake, well, the back end of a snake anyway, and had my funny experience at the gas station in Florence when I was sitting outside with a drink and with my bike and camp gear. A guy offered me $1 when he heard I was sleeping in the desert, thinking I was some kind of hobo. Trails along the South Gila to Area 52 were great, and then this was my favourite campsite. Sunrise and sunset, sunrise gave an ideal end to the Queen's Ransom for me. After the Queen's Ransom, the only logical way to get back to Tucson seemed to be to head back down the AZT. But I didn't take the direct route. I picked up a couple of other things I'd seen on the way and planned a shortcut and then a couple of visits to make the trip more interesting and to find some more trails. So after an overnight with some trail angels in Kearny, I crossed the private bridge, went up a crazy steep track, and then camped on the wash just south of Antelope. Saw another snake with the assistance of my very long selfie stick. And past Oracle, took the advice of a friend and went to Biosphere 2 for an amazing little tour. And then on to Peppersauce Camp. Peppersauce South, the only logical route seems to go via Mount Lemon again, so Summerhaven it was, and then to go back down the highway, camp, and then to get an Airbnb in Vail. By this time I was losing a bit of air out my tyre though, so I was pumping up every couple of hours, and so that necessitated a trip into the outskirts of Tucson for a sealant top up once I got down past Reddington Road. I think I was the slowest person down the Catalina highway with a squidgy tyre and a fully laden bike. Thanks to Sabino Cycles for fitting me in and facilitating both a great breakfast and finally a stop at the Rocking K. By the time I was riding the trails again south of Vail, even though they trend slightly uphill towards Kentucky Camp and beyond. They just felt so much better than 2 weeks before. Obviously some trail fitness had kicked in, and I was really loving the riding. My cowboy camping was pretty nailed by now, and I enjoyed shooting stars every night. The only thing Arizona could do better is gates, which range from fighting barbed wire to one self-closer. And then after Patagonia, a day exploring some of the new for 2023 trails out of Patagonia, headed up via Alto to Mount Hopkins, see how high I could get, and then the last day back to Tucson. The ride back past Hopkins included a segment called the Cliffs of Insanity. Not surprisingly, not many people go that way. And at Tucson, before taking the train and plane home, my first and last margarita.